How to become a knowledge YouTuber. Episode 10.2. Film Tropes.
By Philip Shea.
Plot.
Fake action prologue.
At the beginning of the story, it seemed to be a prologue to a possible speech. But after it's been going on for a while, maybe played for laughs, it's cut short. Then it was discovered that the sequence was just a dream, a daydream, a program in a show, a simulation test, or the like. In any case, the opening revealed is not true, and the actual story now begins with a more restrained tone. Adaptation Longest Upgrade. Sometimes when Hollywood decides to adapt a movie, they will try to make the characters more interesting and give them some anxiety that is not in the book. Peter in the Chronicles of Narnia films, especially Prince Caspian, is far less confident and kingly than in the book. Movie adaptations of Bible stories usually add this. For example, the Book of Exodus never says that Moses did not know his Hebrew blood. In fact, it means the opposite, but most versions have his real race, which is a surprise and angst. Adaptational attractiveness. Adaptive attractiveness refers to a person who is already fat and ordinary. Even the downright ugly person is played by a more traditionally attractive actor. In Annie of the Green Gables, Annie's appearance is unpleasant. Her little face was covered with freckles, and she bemoaned her appearance throughout the series. This also applies to clothing. Characters whose costumes are described as grotesque will become fashionable. For Cinderella, released in 2015, the ugly stepsisters are really ugly in animated movies, just wearing ugly clothes and bad makeup choices here. Although the film's narration commented that they were not ugly on the outside, but ugly on the inside. Age lift. In cartoons, creators will think that the original age of the character is not suitable for their target audience. In 1001 Nights, The Adventures of Sinbad, Sinbad is reimagined as a little boy. In the original story, he was an adult. In a live action, the consideration may be a pragmatic adaptation. For example, the restrictions of child labor laws and the high demands on young actors. Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz is about 7 or 8 years old in the book. Judy Garland was 16 years old when she played her in The Wizard of Oz. The Centerpiece Spectacular. As we all know, the second act of any story is one of the most important parts and one of the most difficult parts to do. Therefore, in order to fascinate everyone during this period, you came up with Centerpiece Spectacular. For example, Bjarge's sequence in Beauty and the Beast, and the tournament sequence in Robin Hood are this kind. The placement of the Centerpiece Spectacular can be very different, although it is never a climax. If the sequence happens at the beginning of the story, it can overlap with the establishment of the role moments. Raiders of the Lost Ark has the truck chase, and like most of the movie has gone on to be legend. And in a rare instance of a movie having two, the opening sequence with the giant stone ball serves a similar purpose. The theme park version. Take classic stories and even reality itself as an example. Remove all complexity. The source material is reduced to several tropes and a barely coherent plots. The characters are flatter than the original version, and the tropes lose legitimacy, but fans will definitely not mind. Disney's Beauty and the Beast became a victim of this routine in the sequel, Beauty and the Beast, The Enchanted Christmas. It takes place in a magic castle, with beauties, beasts and evil things. But there is almost no other content related to the original movie. Many times, writers who make theme park versions completely misread the original work and rely on other people's explanations. However, this is not always a bad thing. The simplification of rules, roles, and activities that exist in the media can be used to help simplify the experience, as long as used carefully. The movie version of The Three Musketeers is usually the theme park version. The most significant is the reduction of the complex character of Cardinal Richelieu to the villain. Technique. Homage shot. Film directors start from movie lovers, and are usually the most obscure movie genre. Most importantly, many modern directors went to film school and watched hundreds of legendary films. Even after they directed the movie themselves, they also often like to use the angles, compositions and shots they saw in school. This trope is not a deliberate imitation or remake of old movies, unless it is a new adaptation of the original media. Peter Jackson's The Lord of the Rings trilogy fits this trope. Scream discretion shot. Scream discretion shot is when a character suffers terrible and/or indescribable pain, but the audience will not see it directly. This usually applies to cold-blooded torture, dramatic rape or cruel and unusual deaths. The first scene of the battle between Diego and Soto at the end of Ice Age is same as the first scene of Simba's fight and Scar at the end of The Lion King. In Jurassic Park, when Dennis died in a jeep, when the jeep shook violently and he was screaming, the camera panned towards the ground.